Tonight, we have a very interesting program about a topic that I'm sure you've heard a lot about, but may not know exactly what to do about it. And that's the problem of misinformation and disinformation. And the Illinois League had created a task force on this topic in order to be able to provide information to members and others. And Ann Sullivan and Barb Laimins are members of the task co-chairs, and they're here tonight to give us a lot of really good information. Ann is co-chair of the DisInformation Task Force and has been a local league leader since 2017 when she joined the League of Women Voters of WIL Met Board of Directors and has chaired voter services, communications, advocacy, and was a co-president. And currently is Wilmet's local league representative on the LWV Cook County Board of Directors. Barb joined the league in 2014, a past LWVIL board member, a local league president, and also serves on the planning board for the LWV National Institute for Civic Discourse, which provides resources and programs on holding civil conversations, and is a LWVIL representative on an Illinois Legislative Task Force to study the implementation of ranked choice voting. So Barb, you must be, and Ann, you must be very busy people. So we're really happy that you've agreed tonight to present us this program and take it away.
Okay, thank you. I want to say hello to our coworker, Matt, who's also working to spread the news of mis and disinformation. So thank you. So hi to Matt, who's probably suffering from jet lag since he's just coming back, right? Yep. So you can all see my screen right now?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great.
And probably a good idea for people to mute themselves while the program is being presented. And would you want questions? Well, questions should go in the chat. Do you think questions while you're speaking, or would you rather just have them at particular breaks?
Anytime you think that if you have a question, yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we just hold them to the end, and then it'll be easier.
Yeah.
Wait till
put them in the chat so you don't forget them by the time we get to the end, and then we can take as many questions as we can at the end. That would be great.
Okay, that sounds really good. And so again, to mute your.
So thank you so much for having us. As Trish said, the League of Women Voters of Illinois recognized that mis and disinformation was going to be a huge problem this upcoming year with the election, and really realized that mis and disinformation is a threat to democracy. It divides our society, and it impairs really good decision making. So they formed a task force. Ann and I, who felt passionately about mis and disinformation, volunteered to co-chair it. And what we did is that we put out a call for volunteers, and we were blessed with having 45 volunteers who wanted to work on the task force. So the work that you'll hear us talk about wasn't created by Ann and I, but dedicated committees that worked together to put together the information for about 6 months. And now that's why we're presenting it and asking you to share it with all your friends and family and community. So, So what is mis and disinformation? Misinformation is just the inadvertent sharing of false information without the intent to harm. We all share misinformation every now and then. We don't mean to hurt anybody. Maybe we just remembered something wrong or said something wrong or out of context. But disinformation is the intentional sharing false information with the intent to harm. And that is what we're seeing in our social media now, even in the news, depending on what news you're reading, is that we have to be very careful with what we're reading, because we know there are people out there who want to influence our opinions. Awareness of this is so important. I'll just give you a minute to look at this screen of statistics of where people are getting their news nowadays. And you can see that while we all may be of the generation where we sat down and watched the 5 and 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news, very few people are really getting their news from TV anymore. Where they're getting their news from is digital devices. And the biggest group getting their news from digital devices is the 18 and the 29-year-old. And where they're getting their news on their digital device is TikTok, Instagram, and social media posts that don't have the foundations of traditional journalism that we were used to growing up. So disinformation is just spreading rapidly. Why, when we say that they're not getting it from television, this was a survey that tested just the television stations. It didn't consider the 24-hour news operations that we have now. We know that there was a shift to this 24-hour news when TV entertainment conglomerates bought news stations, and they felt that the way to entertain was to have news available all the time. Well, you all have watched these stations, and you really find out that a lot of times 23 hours of the 24-hour news cycle is filled with opinion and not really major news stories. It's a good place, we learned last night from Dr. Spikes, to get the initial news reaction of when something is happening, of a breaking news story. But then once the talking heads come in and try to interpret it, that's the time to switch off those 24-hour news channels. So what kind of misinformation are we seeing? What we're seeing is satire and parody, misleading content, imposter content, fabricated content, false connections, false context, and manipulated content. We're not always sure what we're seeing is reality anymore. For instance, you may get an email, you may see this on your social media, our imposter content websites. They may, you can see here on my left anyway, is the real ABC News logo, but on the imposter site, they change it just a little bit so that you can get confused. You can see CNN's real logo and then the imposter logo. What we have to be careful of is when we're reading, we think we're reading on Google a story put out by CNN or ABC News, but instead we've been inadvertently directed to an imposter site that may contain a lot of disinformation or biased news. Another way that we get disinformation is through manipulated content. Manipulated content is when they doctor the images to change them from what was in reality. If you look on the right, you'll see a doctored photo of Keith Ellison from Minnesota, and you can see Amy Klobuchar in amongst the crowd with signs saying defund the police. But if you look on the left, you'll see the original photo, and you could see that no one was holding signs, and Amy Klobuchar wasn't even in the audience. So this was totally manipulated to make people feel a certain way towards a certain candidate or person. Another way that we are manipulated and deceived is through manipulated or misleading content. We've all heard about these crowd sizes in the last few months, and it really depends on the perspective of the photographer. So during the Hillary Clinton campaign, this could be a photo that her campaign would use, while someone from the opposite party might show a different view of the same crowd or at a different time of the rally, so that we get a different image and a different perspective and a different feeling about what's actually going on. Another way that we get manipulated content on social media or on certain faux news sites is that they manipulate previous material. So this was a map that was posted in 2017. It was to show how Republicans and Democrats are clustered throughout the country. Well, what happened was earlier this year, this map was co-opted to all of a sudden show where 97% of all the guns are in red territory. It isn't based on any facts. It wasn't done on any study. It was just someone who put up a post to spread their point of view. So we have to be careful of false connections. Another false connection was made earlier this year when it said, how many executive orders is Joe Biden going to issue? Executive Order 9066 gives illegal immigrants $5,000 gift cards. We all know that's false, that no one is giving immigrants $5,000 gift cards. But what this person did was that they made a false connection between Executive Order 9066. 9066 was an actual executive order of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did issue that order on February 19th in the 1940s. It was the executive order that authorized the encampment of Japanese Americans during World War II. So if someone looked at this post and they went, oh, I want to check it out, and they looked up Executive Order 9066, they would actually find that it was the anniversary on February 19th. And maybe they'll stop looking rather than read that it was just a manipulation and a false connection to an actual order that was given. The other thing that we have to watch out for is fabricated content. And this will run in on our Google searches as we're looking for stories. These news sites are totally false, and they're only created to engender some sort of emotion out of us, to gain notoriety, to be outlandish, to gain our attention. And what we have to do is be very, very careful. It looks like before it's news would be legit of some news site, but yet when you go in and investigate, you're going to notice at the top header, there's no about page. We don't have any idea of who's publishing this publication. If you look at on the upper corner here where my cursor is, they want citizen reporters, whistleblowers, and insiders. So this is not following journalistic standards. What's another clue that this newspaper isn't real? Look at the all capitalizations. Attack, no accident, exclamation mark. You won't find those in your standard journalistic teachings, and it doesn't show up on newspapers that way. What this newspaper was created was to grab your attention and to get clicks. And to get clicks, what clicks mean? It means money for them because their advertisers get rewarded for how many clicks their advertisers get. But look how easy they make it to share this information. All you have to do is share it to Facebook, share it to X, Pinterest, Instagram. I'm not sure of all the logos. Or you can easily email this to a friend. So you can see how things spread so quickly because they make it so easy versus the Washington Post and the New York Times, where all their stories are behind a paywall. NPR really was early on wise to the fact that people in their busy lives now don't take time to read stories, that because we're so busy, we have a tendency to read headlines. So what they did, they posted on Facebook this post. What is wrong with my computer? Why doesn't America, sorry, why doesn't America read anymore? And sure enough, they posted this on Facebook. instantly people were commenting with their ideas of why don't people read anymore. They were sharing the post. It was shared widely. But what NPR knew is that they could tell on how many people actually clicked on the story. And if it had clicked on the story, they would have seen that it was an April Fool's joke. It said, April Fools, we're here to show you that you really are the only ones who read because now you know it's a joke. And so it just proved that people are willing to share what grabs their attention without looking into it more deeply. AI, we realize, is probably one of the biggest threats that we all are worried about now. And AI, artificial intelligence, gets more sophisticated every day. If you look at these two pictures, one of them was generated by a photograph, and the other one was generated by AI. Can you tell which one is the AI? Now, if we were in person, or if I could see all of you, I would say, if you think the AI one is the one on the left, raise your left hand. If you think it's the one on the right, raise your right hand. Okay, so I'm trusting you're all raising your hands, and the few hands I see are absolutely correct. It's the image on the right that was generated by AI. Now, Ann and I used to give, Jane? Oh, no, just got your hand up.
Just trying to get rid of it.
Okay. Ann and I used to give tips on how to recognize AI, but the trouble is the tips that we gave a month ago are no longer valid now because of the advancements in AI. AI has gotten so advanced now that all you have to do is dictate a stylish woman walks down the Tokyo street filmed with warm glowing neon and animated city signage. She wears a black leather jacket, a long red dress, and black boots, and carries a black purse. She wears sunglasses and red lipstick. She walks confidently and casually. The street is damp and reflective, creating a mirror effect of the colorful lights. Many pedestrians walk about. So that was dictated into an AI generator, and that's the picture that came out. So it's hard for us to know where AI is going and how deceptive it can be. We know now that we have to be careful that the words that we hear someone speak may not be their words, or the words of one person may be given to the words of another person. So it becomes, AI has raised all sorts of new challenges as we search to discover the truth behind the mis and disinformation. And the result is, to protect ourselves, we really end up living in filter bubbles, because the more stories you click on, those are the stories that you're going to get more of, because it's the algorithms of social media that determine what you see. For instance, I happen to click on Facebook on a recipe, and now I find my Facebook page filled with recipe posts. The other thing that keeps us in a filter bubble is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is just where we all have a tendency to listen to and accept the things that we already agree with. Confirmation bias and the algorithms combined with cognitive dissonance keep us in a filter bubble and keep us from learning exactly what the other side has to say or what the true facts of a situation is. Just for those of you who don't know, cognitive dissonance is when you're presented with two conflicting facts. You have a tendency to discount the one that you don't agree with, and you keep going to the ones that you do agree with, okay? It's a way to rationalize why you agree with something and discount things that maybe challenge what you agree with. So that gives us our own filter of what we don't look at or what we don't listen to. And that allows us to live in a filter bubble, which is bad for our democracy. We really should be looking at both sides of things. So Anne is going to tell us what we can do.
So it's not all bad news necessarily, because the best thing that you can do, confronted with all of this AI and manipulation, how easy it is to just set up a website and slap the title, daily news on it and send it out to all of your networks and have it go viral, is really the first thing is to develop a healthy sense of skepticism. So, Barb and I have been doing this. I think we had our first meeting of the task force last October, so it's been almost a year. And I thought of myself as a pretty savvy news consumer before that, but over the course of the last 9 months of doing these presentations and working more with this material, I have now gotten to the place where I cannot read any news story, no matter what outlet it comes from, without verifying that it's being reported elsewhere. So I gave the example last night that The Guardian, which is not a real newspaper, was reporting that Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation had hit his neighbor's dog over the head with a shovel and killed him. I looked to see if anybody else was reporting that story, and I found that a number of places were, but they all were repeating the same story that had been published in The Guardian. So we've gotten to the place now where mainstream media are now reporting on the disinformation that other publications are sending out. So you really just have to be careful about what you're reading and making sure, being skeptical to begin with when you read a headline, especially if it makes you emotional. If you get that little kind of thumping in your chest about something and, oh, that makes me so angry, oh, I can't believe that happened, that's a really good sign that it might be a good idea to do a little bit more research on that. Then the second thing is to develop lateral reading skills. So lateral reading skills is basically just, again, what I was saying, looking for other sources. You can verify the story from multiple sources and look for coverage of the other topic. So if it's an image or an event or a video, like a politician speaking, are there other photos from the same event? Barb showed you the photo from the Hillary Clinton rally, where an up-close photo showed that it was a huge crowd, and a photo from far away or from a different time showed you that it wasn't. So looking at other sources for that too. And then the third thing is to evaluate the source's credibility and make sure that the evidence is based on solid reasoning. So again, are they using journalistic standards? The example that Barb gave with the News of Today, or whatever it was called, the all caps, a lot of times I'll see things on social media that have a whole bunch of dashes and, the capitalization is weird. That's not your basic journalistic standard. You also should look to the source. Who's saying this? Where's the byline? If it doesn't have a byline, that's a clue right there that it might be disinformation. And checking the About Us area of the website to make sure, to find out, who's publishing this, and can you find out anything more about the publisher? So what we really have to do is what I say is, be our own fact checkers, and just make sure, again, we are responsible for stopping the spread of disinformation by not sharing information that we haven't verified ourselves. Go to the next one, Barb. If your computer is going to let you. No, not that one. So this is just what I was saying. We're all in this together, right? When you feel emotional, that's a really important cue to resist the urge to share before you research. The second thing is, we all have that uncle or friend or neighbor who we might disagree with politically, who likes to tell us about the latest conspiracy theory that they heard or the latest report they heard on a news channel that we don't prefer. And what we really want to do, particularly not as much maybe with the uncle, but with people online that are arguing with us or disagree with us, is we want to tell them all the reasons that they're wrong. But that just makes them dig in. So what we really need to do is build common ground with them. So we need to take the conversation offline if this is someone that we know personally, and we need to really listen to what they're saying and be curious about what they're saying. And then you can start to ask them questions. And we did a webinar about this. It's called How to Talk to People That You Disagree With Politically. There's lots of resources out there for talking to people that you don't necessarily agree with. That maybe their views make you angry, or their views are not true, and you want to convince them to think a different way. And asking them questions and sort of getting them to question what they're saying themselves is a really great tactic to kind of get them down the path of maybe believing something, questioning whether they should believe what they're saying. So that's on our website. I'm going to show you where in just a minute. And then the third thing that we're inviting you to do is to take action. There's so many myths out there already about election security, and we're going to be seeing more and more and more as the weeks go on. Instead of sharing the disinformation, so you see a post, it's false. Your instinct is hit share and put in the comments, these are all the reasons why this is wrong. But you really shouldn't do that. What you should do is make a new post, a separate post of your own that actually has the correct information. So your friend posts an article that says, illegal migrants were bused to Chicago entirely by the Democratic Party so they could vote. You want to click and say, no, this isn't true. Instead, you could find an article that disproves that and post it instead of reposting the disinformation. And that's in the media literacy parlance, or in the disinformation parlance, that's called pre-bunking election myths. So if we get the right information out there first, and maybe if people see the right information first, when they see the wrong information, they may be more likely not to believe it. And I'm going to take you to where we have some of that information on our website. So this is a very bad screenshot of our website, which is lwvil.org/misdis-info. I can almost say that by heart now. And we've divided the web page into a few sections. Also, if you just go to lwvil.org, and there's a banner across the top that says Fight Disinformation, so you can just click that too. But the top section that you see on the left of the screen is the Take Action section. And the first thing that we invite you to do is to report disinformation. So if you see something on social media, or particularly if something shows up in your mailbox that seems to be disinformation or propaganda, or you hear an election myth repeated and the person has a source, you can click on the button that says report it to us, and it'll take you to a form where you can fill out all the information and hit submit. Where it's going to go when you hit submit is to Common Cause Illinois, who is one of our partners. And they have connections with social media companies and other companies that they can actually call someone on the phone, and that person will answer, or send them an email and they will respond. And they will say, hey, this false post was made on Facebook. No guarantee that Facebook is going to take it down, but at least they can reach a human to tell them it's there, which I don't know if any of you have ever tried to report anything, but I've never talked to a human there. The other thing it's going to do is send the information to us and to our friend Matt Gorman, who is on our rapid response team. And Common Cause is sending us a compilation of election myths that they're hearing around the state. So this is great because, I'm up in Wilmette, and if I see some myth floating around and I report it, but it hasn't made its way to Champaign yet, the task force can send out some of this information to the 40 plus point people that we have on our team and let them know, hey, you might be seeing this in the future. And you could send out a post again to pre-bunk before this comes to your area. So that's another one of our goals, is to share the information among the more than 40 leagues that we have across the state. Then the second section here, which says Fight Disinformation in Our Elections, will take you to what we are calling our Election Facts Toolkit. And that's what you see on the right. So we have a team of people who have compiled more than 20 election rumors and created correct posts to counter those. So I know the writing is really small and I don't actually have my glasses on. But the first one, for example, down at the bottom says, did you know automatic voter registration is accurate and secure? So instead of reading a whole story about how, motor voter or automatic voting registration is a perfect recipe for fraud, we can send out the information ahead of time that it's not, and then maybe someone will see that on your network, and when they read a story that says differently, they'll say, hey, I heard something from the League of Women Voters that said that that wasn't right. So we've made it as easy as we could figure out how to make it, given the constraints of our website, for you to share these posts. All you have to do is go to this page. And if you click on any one of those graphics, it's going to open up on Facebook. And if you have a Facebook account, it'll open up in your Facebook account, and you'll be able to hit the share button on the bottom and immediately share it to your network, or I believe you can also share it on some of the other platforms. The other thing that's in the election toolkit that you might want to take a look at that's not pictured here is back in March before the Illinois primary, we did a webinar with the Illinois State Board of Elections about how Illinois strives to keep our elections secure. And Matt Dietrich, who's their public information officer, spoke for an hour about all the different techniques they have to ensure that your vote is secure. And it's really interesting, talking about working with Homeland Security, talking about how they work with the social media companies, how they work with the FBI. It really gave me a lot of confidence in how they are making sure that your vote gets to where it's supposed to. But for other people too that that might be skeptical, it might be something good for them to watch as well. And your local election authority, so your county clerk or the Illinois State Board of Elections, are ultimately the source of the correct election information. The League of Women Voters is a good source too, but it's ultimately up to your election authority what the voting hours are, when they're open. So we also want to encourage people to seek them out if they have questions about the elections. Down in Texas, there was a robocall that went out that told people that polling places were closing early. They were not going to stay open until 7. They were only going to stay open until 5. So if I had to work until 5 and I was planning to vote after work, maybe I stayed home. That was obviously a voter suppression technique. That would be the kind of thing that you want to make sure that you check with the county clerk, because they all have voter hotlines that you can call, and they also have it on their web pages of what the voting hours are. And we do have a link in the election toolkit to find your local election authority if you don't happen to know what that is. So that might be a helpful thing to post as well. And then do you want to go to the next slide? So the second thing that we have on our webpage is fact checking. And again, you are the best fact checker, okay? Not necessarily all the fact checking sites, but if you, again, see something that you're really not sure about and you want to check it out, we have 2 resources for you. The first one is the News Literacy Project, which is really one of the leading authorities as far as how to be a good consumer of news. They have put together something called the Misinformation Dashboard for the election of 2024. And you can see their homepage in the bottom right there that it's a tool tracking the topics and tactics of the 2024 election misinformation. So there's a lot of really, really good information there about what's true and what isn't. The other resource that we have that we developed in partnership with a tech company in Virginia, and actually it was the League of Women Voters of Virginia and the League of Women Voters in Utah that started this partnership. But this company is actually an AI company. So here's a really good example of where AI is good. They developed something for us called Election Facts Illinois, and their AI algorithm scrapes, I believe we have 6 different resources, different fact-checking sites, Snopes, PolitiFact, Reuters, USA Today, for all the latest mis and disinformation stories that those fact-checking services are publishing. So again, that's a really good resource if you're trying to check the facts. And it also has a search function that you can type in the topic that you're looking for, and it will pull up stories from all of those different places. It also has a local news tab, and we have a number of publications from around Illinois and their headlines. And again, it's scraping those sites for election stories that you can fact check there as well. Okay, next one. Wait, you're muted.
I'm afraid it's frozen.
It's frozen. Okay, that's okay. Let me just go to my little PowerPoint here. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, and then this is the final section of our page, which is what we're really proud of, I have to say, and this is our Learn More section. We have conducted webinars almost every month since March. We took August off or no, we took July off, and our August program was not recorded because the speaker has a contract with MSNBC and couldn't be recorded. But other than that, we have put all of our presentations on YouTube. They're all about different disinformation topics. And the one that I mentioned earlier about how to talk to people you disagree with politically is one of the first ones you see there. Last week, we had an excellent presentation with Dr. Dan Laimins, who is one of your local professors at the University of Illinois in the social psychology department. And he told us about how we get fooled and how we get scammed. That was extremely interesting if you're interested in the psychology of it all. And then we also did one on media literacy, which is just more in depth of those 3 little points that I gave you earlier about lateral reading and being skeptical and checking the source. Highly, highly recommend that one. We have 2 more. Well, we have 1 more for sure. And we're another one that we're working on, and we are going to make it happen. The next one is October 23rd, which is Truth, Disinformation, and the Media in the 2024 election. We have a lecturer from the University of Chicago Graham School who is also a journalist and a journalism instructor. And he's going to talk about some of the things that Barb talked about with how the media are driven by clicks, and how that really influences what you see in the news, and how we can have trust in the media again while all of this is going on. And the reason it has the asterisk is because we were pretty sure that was a good date until yesterday, when I saw that Kamala Harris had accepted CNN's invitation to have a debate on that date, even though the other candidate, Trump, has not accepted it. We don't know what's going to happen with that. So we're going to go forward with it, but we're going to have it a little earlier in the day. So we're going to have it at 6 p.m. We usually do 7 p.m., but we're going to do 6, just so in the case that there might be a debate, everybody can still tune into that. So they can come learn about disinformation first and then see what happens. And then the second one, we don't have a speaker tapped yet, but we're working on kind of having a post-election interactive discussion with some election law experts, so that we can figure out how we can move forward, perhaps with advocacy for election laws, for laws monitoring social media content. We have no idea what's going to be going on by the 3rd week in November, but that's our plan. So stay tuned for more information about that as well. And these both will be recorded and on the website eventually as well. And I think that's all I have.
That's it.
Ready for questions.
I did get a message from Matt. Matt, did you want to say a couple things you said about the county clerks around the state?
Yeah, but first off, I want to thank you guys. It really, for me, I've spoken to you a lot, but I think it solidified a lot of the questions people have, on how to react and what they're seeing. And we've had a few cold examples the last month that you guys told me about. And, I think what happens now between October and the election is that and I can't remember if it was Ann or you who said that. My biggest concern with a lot of these things is I agree with her. The mainstream media is starting to play into it now a little bit, and they amplify bad messages. And the second part of it is about triggering emotions. And that's something that key drivers to the things that we're going to be looking for in the month of on the state, it probably so many county clerk offices. The insight into that is, it's going to be a challenge on a lot of levels. But the one outcome of this is that we agreed today to do a letter that will come from Becky's office. It'll go to every single county clerk in the state of Illinois, and I think there's 103 counties. 103 clerks, but there's a different kind of in a few counties. Anyway, it basically says it outlines a lot of where people can go and articulate whatever the issues are, and the reporting apparatus, like you guys already have for Mis and Dis, will dovetail into what we've got going into the state league and then subsequently to DC. So it's kind of interesting times right now. But yeah, I feel like we're so prepared now.
Excellent, excellent. So are there questions for us? Comments? Thanks, Matt, for all you're doing.
Yeah, Trisha?
You know, I know about, there's sort of two competing ideas that I have is one is that there's a lot of information out there, but false websites and, you know, algorithms to make you look at things. And so to sort of combat that, I tend to keep my information to just a few what I consider reliable sources, you know, like the New York Times or the Atlantic or something like that, which also has the same effect of keeping you in a bubble. And so, you know, I'm sort of wrestling with that.
You know,
Second.
it's really interesting, and Ann and I were talking last night about our new reading habits since we started with this task force. In that our 1 cup of coffee is now extended to 3 cups of coffee, because by the time you check everything out and you read the Times and you read the Post, and then you check, you know, what's going on Twitter to see if there's any latest things, and then social media, it is mis and disinformation has created a huge time piece for us all, because we do have to investigate many things. I do try. I mentioned last night that while I read things that make me feel comfortable, I do every day read a newspaper or go to a website that's my total opposite viewpoint. I don't read it as long, and it really motivates me to get moving, because I want to be done with it, and I work faster when I'm done. So, and you were saying the same thing about your reading habits, right?
Right, right. Yeah. You know, the question that someone asked us, which I thought was a great question, is like, what are your news habits like? What do you do when you get up in the morning? And I said that, you know, I do start with Apple News because that's kind of the headlines of the day. But what I realized is Apple News is a curated feed just for me, you know? So what I'm seeing in my Apple News is not the same as what my husband sees in his, or what, you know, somebody else that lives down the block sees in theirs, because they, again, their goal is to engage you and get you to spend more time with Apple and then with the publications that are on their platform. And that helps them keep those publications on the platform, and that keeps them making money. So it is easy to be in the bubble, but you know, I think Barb's right that if we, my husband's very good about like trying to, you know, watch other channels that I have a hard time watching, because we do need to see what's being said. And I also want to just amplify what Matt said, that, you know, this whole thing about the Haitian immigrants, you know, eating the pets, that was one person that posted that on Facebook, you know, back several weeks ago. And it not only got amplified by the candidates who are using it for their gain, but then the media companies are reporting it. And now there's, how many different memes did I get today? You know, one was like, you know, a meme of babies, you know, chewing on dogs' ears, you know, with like a musical that they're eating the pets in the background. And it's
It's
just,
kind of funny.
it's funny, but it's also, you know, it's so harmful to these
Of
poor
course
Haitian
it is.
people
Yeah.
that you know, it's hard. So I think you just have to be skeptical, and you just have to kind of, you know, think and stop before you share, is like the 3 words that I try to say to myself. And that includes not just sharing it on Facebook, but also my thing is I take screenshots of things and send them to my different group chats of friends so that we can discuss them.
I think it's
Yes.
really, really important for us all to realize how that eat the cats and eat the dogs came from one Facebook post that a woman said her neighbor's cat was lost, who was later found in the basement. And it became national news and has caused 33 bomb threats and chaos for the poor family that are living there. But the speed of that story makes you is just amazing. Is and how powerful social media is, that we really have to be careful what we share and what we do with the information that we're receiving, and check it out. You know, part of the posts that you're seeing on social media too are done by bots. You all know that they're not all done by real people. They're created by someone living in a house in Ukraine, and he gets paid for as many clicks as he can generate. And so those news stories are always playing on our prejudices, playing on our fears, preying on our conspiracy theories, that people want to believe conspiracy theories because it's a simple answer to a compound problem. And we have to be, one of the keys that maybe a story isn't true is how much emotion it raises in you. When I was on Twitter yesterday, I saw all these pictures of them rioting in Philadelphia. And it was the first thing in the morning, and I thought, oh my God, what happened? And I got really nervous and fearful that some dangerous cabal was spreading violence throughout our nation. And I went to the Washington Post, no story. Went to the New York Times, no story. Went to the newspaper in Philadelphia, no story. It was probably a picture from some Black Lives Matter riots in 2020 that someone had reposted and said, last night, Philadelphia is in flames. So we have to when you feel an emotional reaction, you really need to, for sure, double check your news story.
And you could yeah, go ahead, Jane. Yeah,
I was
please.
just going to point out that the eating the cats and dogs story was amplified by both the presidential and vice presidential candidates for the Republican Party on television. So,
Yep.
It's not just social media on that one.
Right. Well,
oh no, for sure. But the continued focus on it is so the reporting of the outrageous fact that they said that has given that story weeks and weeks of legs that it would not have otherwise had. Excellent. And that was what I was, saying about the Guardian story that I was telling you about. All these, like a legitimate publication, Rolling Stone was one of them, did have the story, but they were just reprinting what this, maybe a little shady publication had reported. They didn't go and talk to anybody themselves. They didn't have any original sources. They just reprinted that, hey, somebody said this. And I guess that's okay because they weren't lying. It's true that someone said it. I mean, that's the level that we're at now.
Thanks.
Right. We've offered to give our presentation to the candidates. They have not accepted.
So Carol had a question in the chat.
Yes, my question was, you were talking about filters. How do you get out of those, where you're in this filter bubble? You mentioned like the recipes. It could be anything. It could be some exercise thing you're interested in. It could just be whatever. And then you're in it forever and ever and ever. How do you get out of that?
Well, in Facebook, if you go to the 3 little dots on the top of the post, you can report the post. And
yeah, I've done that.
And say, I don't want to see them anymore. And you can snooze them.
Yeah.
And say it's not relevant. And that's the only way to get it off your Facebook feed. And the same for your Instagram feed. For Twitter, I don't even, I just don't even bother. I just scroll faster, But that's the power of the algorithm, that you could click on something once and it shows up. Or have you ever searched for just say a lawnmower, and the next time you're on Google, all of a sudden you're getting all the lawnmower ads? I mean, it's the technology is just really geared to feed you what you want.
And all of these companies are sharing their data. So right here, if you say lawnmower, I guarantee you when I go in there again, it's going to say lawnmower, because Apple shares that data with Google, with Facebook, with everything else. Now, the funny thing is, I talk about mis and disinformation all day, every day. I don't ever get served anything about mis and disinformation. I don't. So,
Wonder
some
what they're
filtering going on.
recognizing, right?
Right. Well,
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're not publishing that to people, whether it's me or anybody else, you know, because disinformation drives emotion, drives the algorithm, drives clicks, drives money.
Huh.
Yes.
That's okay.
LWVCC. That's what.
Sorry, Teresa Michelson.
Hi.
I'm just curious about the different social media possibilities, of which most of us use next to none. And you saw the percentage of young people, what was that, age 18 to 29? I mean, it's horrifying, you know, that 89% of their information is from them. My question is there different kinds of disinformation put out on TikTok as opposed to X, as opposed to Instagram? Do we
Yeah.
know?
Anne has
Well,
younger children, so she can speak
well,
totally to
college
this.
students, but yes. So the interesting thing about 18 to 29-year-olds and the amount of time that they spend on TikTok and Instagram is how much they rely on influencers for their information, as opposed to, you know, news sources, or, you know, we think about journalists, right? I don't know, Katie Couric is jumping into my head for some reason. For them, there's Katie Kuhaha, you know, that's just some girl who's cute, who decided that they're smart and they're going to talk about the election. And that's what's different, I think, about that generation. And, you know, there's mom influencers too. I mean, it's not just that demographic, but, you know, they really have, you know, my kids are like right in the thick of it. They're 19 and 21. So they were in high school during COVID, you know, missed college because of COVID. I mean, they have a very healthy distrust of institutions, and they are looking for alternatives. They are looking for people to tell them things, and they don't trust, you know, we all trusted, Barb was saying, we all trusted Walter Cronkite. They don't trust the Walter Cronkites of the world, today's Walter Cronkites. They trust their peers who are out there posting videos and have a lot of followers. So I'm not saying my kids specifically. I mean, we try to instill in them an interest in actual news and healthy skepticism. We have a lot of family conversations about it, but as a generation, you know, there's so many factors with these kids, and it'll be really interesting to see how many of them actually come out and vote in this election, because traditionally they don't. But, you know, if an influencer like Taylor Swift tells them to vote and she can figure out how to do that, maybe they will.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
So I think what they're getting their news is from other people who are influenced by other influencers, or for disinformation.
But
So-
it's not news, right?
It does feel like, you know, we're a small party in the way of a fire hose, and we stand no chance. I mean, do we feel like it makes a difference
I'm on mute.
to combat what we can?
I'm of the firm belief that we have to try.
Uh-huh.
We have to try, because if we don't, it'll never stop. And so what we have to do is slowly chip away. And so what the experts say, and it does work, is that, as Anne mentioned when she was talking during the presentation, is that we never can, we can't walk away from people we totally feel are basing their decisions on mis and disinformation. But you also can't tell them that they're wrong. What you have to do, the research shows, is keep asking them questions. Where did you get that information? Have you seen it in other places? Why do you believe that would be the solution? And just keep asking them question after question after question, and show interest, be calm. And what we can hope to do is slowly chip away at their beliefs and maybe wake up something in themselves that they'll start to ask questions. And they'll begin to wonder, maybe that isn't quite true. And if we can do that, is to get them to use some of their own critical thinking, it it may slowly make a difference. But research has shown forever, and what is that if you argue with someone in direct conflict with their beliefs and say they're wrong, this is true, that you're wrong, I'm wrong, all it does is confirm those beliefs more solidly in their brain. Their beliefs become stronger if you argue with them. That's why using the opposite approach will hopefully make them begin to say, well, maybe that doesn't really make sense now that I say it out loud, you know.
And I'm also a believer in, pendulum swing. So the journalist who introduced us last night was telling the story about how disinformation dates all the way back to Cleopatra and Mark Antony, and they were manufacturing these little coins with disinformation about their enemies. And eventually that went away, and then you move on to, propaganda in journalism. Like it just continues throughout history. This has been a problem. I think that things are worse now than maybe they have been before. Probably, but they're also new problems. Social media, like I was just laughing today, a friend of mine posted something back in 2012. Now, a lot of you may not be on Facebook, but I am. And back in, when Facebook first came out and started being available to people who weren't college students, people posted their status in the third person. So it would say your name, it would say Ann Sullivan, and then it would say, is drinking a cup of water. Like those are the Facebook memories that it shows me from like 10, 15 years ago. That's how new it is. It's like in my college students' lifetime that the social media has happened, and it's in their lives. In 2007 is when the first iPhone came out. So this is all something that's been building and building and building, and eventually, this is going to, I believe, reach some kind of tipping point where there has to be action, and it may not be the Supreme Court that takes the action. They didn't rule on any of the social media cases that were before them this session, but eventually we can hope that there will be remedies for some of these things, but not by November 5th.
Right.
There's a
Carol.
question in the chat, and it's from Robin, and I think she's traveling internationally somewhere, so I wanted to make sure she got her question asked. The Daily Show used to be a key source for college students a few years back. I'm curious if this is their main source, their main news source now. The Daily Show.
It probably still is for the younger millennials who are no longer college students, but I think the kids that are in college now, I don't know. I haven't looked at the demographics of the Daily Show. So as I'm saying, like the videos on TikTok have kind of taken over. My kids, I don't even think they know how to operate the cable box. They never watch anything on regular TV. They only watch streaming on Apple TV, and mostly they watch things on their phone. So yeah, I think the Daily Show is still very popular still with a younger audience, but with this Generation Z, I'm not sure about that. We were also asked about that last night, actually, about whether that's news, whether that's bad that these Daily Show and Stephen Colbert and some of the others, do all these commentaries about politics. And Barb and I had two different opinions about that. My opinion was that if it engages that generation in politics, if they hear Stephen Colbert say something and they start to think about it, I think that's a good thing. But Barb's point of view, not to speak for her, was it's fine if it interests them, but they also have to be taught that they need to verify that information and read more about it so that they understand the context, which I also agree with.
Yeah, it's I think it's great, but we have to recognize that it's satire and it's comedy. And so that we need to go and look at that they're taking clips. Are we sure that they're not out of context? And so while we can laugh and enjoy it, we do have to, for a younger person, if that's their only source of news, I think that they would need to be taught to go beyond that and now find the basis of that comedy. Yeah.
Oh, but one piece of good news, I was going to say this earlier, I'm sorry, is that Illinois was the first state I believe, to pass legislation requiring a unit of media literacy in K-12 education.
Mm.
So we are, along with our civics requirement, which is also wonderful, we are attempting to teach young students how to be critical thinkers about the news. And I think that's great. And I think Michael Spikes, the speaker last night, is one of the people that's working on the curriculum. And I believe he said there's now 6 states that have that requirement. So that's a piece of good news, because they'll be telling the kids in school, like, okay, TikTok's great, but here's what a real news source looks like. And you do need to add the context to what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. I want to be respectful of our speaker's time, and so it's after 8 o'clock. We really appreciate this kind of information, and I think it's just wonderful that the League has gone into this in such depth and with such resources to offer. So we really appreciate the program. And of course, our program will be on our YouTube channel and social media. So it's you can recommend it to friends.
Turn off the comments. Turn off the comments.
Yeah, I think normally the question and answer part is not part of the.
Oh, okay.
So
that's okay.
So it'll take a few days, but it should be there pretty shortly. So thank you very much, Barb, and thank you, Anne, for.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.